Welcome to Gear Talk. Here we are in the Sun Parlour Coffee House Session Studio in Kingsville, and we have a wonderful group from London, Ontario called Broomsticks and Hammers, and we've got Paul, Bill, and we've got Dave. We'll start with, we'll start with you, Bill.
Sure.
As soon as you opened your guitar case, I was excited to see a Gibson. Of course, we live in this area, very close to the old Kalamazoo plant.
Yep.
And this guitar was probably made in Montana or in Nashville or somewhere. It looks like a I was going to say J35.
You're right on.
Yeah, J35. And it has the banner logo, which is really cool.
Yes.
It's nice to see that. Only a Gibson is good enough. I believe the banner came out to have something to do with commemorating the women that worked in the factory. Yeah, during wartime.
That's an interesting fact.
We got to look that up, but that's what's in my brain right now. Next to us over here, we have our friend. Let me get it, Bill.
That's Paul.
Paul. Hey, we'll cut that part out.
Or not.
Our friend Paul is at the end, and now I was really excited when I saw this guitar because I didn't know the name. And this is a handmade guitar from London, Ontario. So you got to tell us just a bit about this.
Yeah. So just a little backstory. I played Les Pauls and arched top guitars for ages in my formative years, right? Pretty much from when I started playing, and I didn't like playing flat top guitars like Strats or Tellys at all. And the first Telly that I got, I was probably in my mid-30s by the time I actually bought one because I wanted a cheap travel guitar. So I bought like a cheap, overseas-made Telecaster and just fell for it completely and stopped playing any of the arch guitars. And like I think many guitar players, once you figure out that you can do anything you want on a Telecaster with only two pickups and, as Brad Paisley says, a cutting board with a guitar neck on it, you realize there's really no need for anything else. So I had wanted to get a higher end instrument, and it was a question of either from the rack or getting something custom made. And there's a luthier in my neighborhood where I live. He lives right around the corner. I can walk to his house. And I contacted him and he said, I'll build you the instrument that you want, and this is what he came up with. The company goes by Titan Custom Guitars. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram. And the idea was kind of have a vintage, kind of early 50s kind of Telecaster looking instrument. It's got a lacquer finish, so it will wear off. He offered to relic it, but I said, "You'll do it yourself." I want to earn those scratches. And in fact, when I got it the very first day, I put the strap on, I smacked it, and I got a dent in it the first day that I took it out of the case.
Get it out of the way.
But he did a beautiful job. So it's kind of a vintage-looking instrument, but it's got some modern appointments that I just over the years have come to like. A flatter radius, a compound radius, 10 to 16 inches. It's got locking tuners on it here. It's got the 22nd fret, which is, some people will complain about Telecasters. But otherwise, it's pretty much, exactly what there's nothing special going on here. A slight tonal compromise with noise canceling pickups, just because some of the venues that we play or that I play as a sideman have to dump the volume half the time because the jukeboxes or the popcorn machines are kind of making the thing hum. But other than that, it's just exactly what you'd expect, a cutting board with a guitar neck on it. And I love it, and I play it all the time. That's
great, and I love the coloring of the neck, and you were saying that this particular neck is a baked neck.
Yeah, this is, they kind of hyper kiln dry or hyper heat the maple wood to kind of dry it all out, all the enzymes and the moisture comes out, which kind of speeds up the aging process.
And then take it out back, give it a left-handed cigarette.
Yeah, exactly, and it's very stable, and it has a nice pop to it, and probably the weirdest thing about it is when they're new and even as they age, they kind of have this interesting smell to them. Like you can kind of smell the kind of cooking process that went in. I guess some places call them caramelized, and maybe that's part of it.
So that's a beautiful guitar.
Shout out to Brandon Stephen at Titan Guitars who makes this an amazing instrument.
Great, thanks. We didn't leave the bass player to the last on purpose. We want to hear about your bass because you have two of these, you were telling me.
I do, yes.
One is not enough. No, one is not enough.
I've pretty much exclusively played a Guild short scale bass, acoustic electric bass for the past 25 years. I've always played in folk bands. And then when we did our second album, we started moving a bit out of the folk realm and into a bit of a more rock realm. And I just found I wanted to get something a bit more easier, a bit more control. So I wanted to find another short scale bass. And there's not very many short scale basses around. And this one came up on Kijiji. And I remember calling him up, and I actually took my son with me because he's also a bass player, and I thought, this would be a good bass for you. And so
That's how he sold it to his wife.
Yeah.
And so I made my son try it, and I said, look, it's a short scale, it fits you. And I really didn't have any intent to make it my main bass, but it fit really well as we were moving out of the folk realm and into a bit more of a folk rock. It just made things easier. I loved it so much that I saw another one. This one's in 1985. I saw in 1972 like Lake Placid Blue.
Oh, lovely.
And it was half the weight. Like
This one is heavy.
This is a heavy. I
Very
don't know
heavy.
why
I picked
they
it up.
went-
I didn't tell you, but I did pick it up.
This one's heavy. So I ended up buying the 1972.
Well, you bought a Guild before that, though.
Before that, yes, I bought a Guild long neck. So yeah, I have 4 basses now, and
Good for you.
I'm lucky to have a son that plays bass, so now I can.
Yep.
4
Have an
bases and he
excuse.
still can't go home.
But the thing with these basses, they were sort of a poor man's bass back in the 70s and in the 80s. And what they did was they used a Fender Strat pickup, so it's actually a guitar pickup. And so one of the first things I did was replace the guitar pickup because it had 6 coils for a guitar, and I replaced it with a local Romaine Pickups is the business in London, and it has the 4 coils for the bass, so it's a bass pickup. So that was one of the first things. That's the only mod that I've done to it, and that's given it a bit more of a warmer, deeper tone. Usually, having the Strat pickup, it can have a bit harsher, trebly tone, which some people like. That's maybe the thing with these basses. But for me, it was just I wanted something short scale. I'm not a very tall person, and I just like the feel of a short scale bass.
That's great. It's a beautiful bass and a nice see-through finish on that one too.
Yeah.
I like it. Now, did you take off the thumb rest?
I
Or
did.
was-
I took off the thumb rest.
Got in the way?
My 72 actually has the
Down
rest
below.
down below, and I've left that on. I probably will take that off. I've always played, from up here, so it was just sort of getting in the way.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you for sharing all your instruments.
Thank
It's
you.
great to hear about the pickups being made in London, Ontario, as well as some wonderful guitars. So once again, thanks to Broomsticks and
Hammers.
Hammers from London, Ontario. Gear Talk is now done.